All right, let's dive deep today. We're going to be tackling the parable of the rich man and Lazarus.
Oh, a good one.
Yeah, it's a really powerful story
There is.
from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16. Um, and we're going to unpack it and figure out why it's so powerful. It's been debated, like, for centuries.
It's so fascinating because it's not just a story. It's an allegory
Yeah.
with symbolism. And it has, like, deeper meanings, and it forces us to ask these really uncomfortable questions
Yeah.
about life and the choices we make
Yeah.
and what might lie beyond this life.
Okay, so picture this, right? We have a scene of extremes. On one hand, we have a fabulously wealthy man. He's wearing purple fine linen. He's constantly feasting. Like every day's a holiday for him.
And, you know, we have to consider the historical context.
Right.
But then purple dye was as precious as gold.
Wow.
You know, a symbol reserved for royalty and the absolute elite. This detail isn't just about, you know, how much money he had.
Right.
It was about his power and the vast inequality that existed.
It's like driving a top-of-the-line sports car today.
Yeah.
Just a blatant, like, display of affluence.
A status symbol.
But here's the twist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right outside of this mansion, practically at this rich man's doorstep, lies Lazarus, this beggar,
Yeah.
who's battling, like, unimaginable hardship.
Right.
He's covered in sores, literally starving, hoping for, like, a few crumbs to fall from the rich man's table.
And even the dogs,
Yeah.
like the scavengers of the streets, are taking pity on him, licking his wounds. It's just such a powerful detail highlighting his complete abandonment
Yeah.
and the society that allows suffering like that to exist.
It's a gut punch for sure.
Yeah.
The parable doesn't shy away from just the brutal realities of poverty.
Right.
But then both men die.
Of course.
And this is where things take a sharp turn.
Yeah.
It really forces us to consider what's next.
Yeah.
The afterlife. So Lazarus, you know, despite a lifetime of suffering, is carried by angels to Abraham's bosom,
All right.
which is like a place of peace and comfort in the hereafter.
While the rich man finds himself on the other side of that,
Yeah.
in Hades, tormented by flames.
Yeah.
It's like a complete reversal.
Totally. And from like the depths of his torment, he spots Abraham in the distance, and Lazarus is by his side. And consumed by regret, he begs Abraham to send Lazarus with just one single drop of water to relieve his agony.
Here's where we see his desperation,
Yeah.
but also his short-sightedness.
Yeah.
Because in life, he had every opportunity to show Lazarus even a tiny bit of kindness. But he chose indifference. And now he's pleading for a favor from the person he totally disregarded.
It really makes you wonder, is he truly remorseful
Hmm.
or just fixated on his own discomfort at this point? What's interesting is he goes even further, right? He pleads with Abraham to send Lazarus back to warn his 5 brothers so they can avoid the same fate.
And here's where the parable takes on, like, another level of complexity. Because
Yeah.
Abraham tells him that a massive chasm separates them.
Right.
And it's not about physical distance, you know. It's this fundamental divide between their choices and their relationship with God.
So are we supposed to interpret this as like a literal physical separation in the afterlife? Or is it more about this symbolic division between those who live righteously and those who didn't?
That's been debated for centuries. Theologically, it's a huge question.
Right.
But maybe it's not really about the exact geography, right?
Oh,
It's about the weight of choices made during life,
right.
our earthly lives,
Yeah.
the gravity of that.
Yeah, and it almost seems to suggest that, like, there's no going back. There are no do-overs. Once we cross that threshold into the afterlife,
Right.
like, that's it. And it's not just about the location, is it? It's about, like, the rich man's plea being rejected.
Of
He
course.
seems to think a miracle's going to do for his brothers. Like, if someone rises from the dead, then they'll change.
Exactly. But Abraham makes a really crucial point. He says they already have Moses and the prophets. You know what I mean?
Right, the scriptures.
Yeah, like they have the teachings to guide them already.
So it's almost like even a supernatural spectacle,
Right.
it's not going to change their hearts if they're not open to the truth. If they're not open to repenting.
That's right. So it's a huge statement about faith and free will.
Right, right. It suggests that real change has to come from within.
Yeah.
It's not about seeing signs and wonders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes us think about, like, what even is true belief?
Right.
Is it just blind faith based on, like, these crazy spectacles?
Right.
Or is it a deeper, more considered acceptance of spiritual teachings?
Yeah. It leads us to those, you know, like core messages of the parable. It's easy to just think, oh, this is a condemnation of wealth. You know, be careful about material riches. But like, is that really it?
I don't think so. I think it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
The parable, it isn't saying wealth is bad in itself.
Right.
It's more about how the rich man was completely indifferent to the suffering around him.
Right.
He, couldn't see Lazarus as a person. It's about taking moral responsibility when you have privilege.
So it's not about having wealth, but about how you use it.
Exactly.
How it changes how you interact with others.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, though, right? It flips the script on wealth and poverty.
Yeah.
The rich man, with all this abundance, he's actually the bankrupt one, spiritually.
While Lazarus, who has nothing, is actually seen as rich.
Yeah.
By God. So it makes you wonder what it really means to be, blessed. You mentioned earlier how people have different interpretations. Some think it's literal, others think it's symbolic.
Right.
Do you think this is a literal depiction of the afterlife?
Is that what it's getting at?
That's the big question, isn't it? The parable uses such vivid imagery, but I'm not sure we should take every detail as a literal heaven or hell.
Right.
I think it's more about the meaning behind it.
Right. The moral and spiritual lessons.
Right.
So rather than getting stuck on the layout of the afterlife,
right,
we should focus on how this story challenges us to live differently now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it forces us to ask, are we living in a way that matches our values? What we think God wants.
Yeah.
Are we using what we have, our talents and our time? Our wealth, even. Are we using that to make the world better?
I think so. We've been talking a lot about the rich man's failures.
Right.
But what about Lazarus?
Yeah. What about him? What can we learn from him? He doesn't seem to do much in the story.
He's almost a passive character.
Right.
But I think there's more to him. There's this, quiet dignity to him.
Yeah.
He goes through the worst suffering imaginable.
Yeah.
But he never gets bitter.
Right.
He doesn't resent God.
Right.
He doesn't, shake his fist at the heavens.
Yeah.
He endures with faith.
Yeah. And in the end, it's he's rewarded for that.
Yeah.
It shows us that even when things are really hard, we can choose to trust God. We can choose to have hope that there's something more beyond our struggles.
Exactly. And it's about perspective, too. The
Right.
rich man is obsessed with material comfort. But Lazarus is focused on something bigger. Something beyond his circumstances.
That's interesting you say that about perspective, because we haven't really talked about Abraham.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think his role is in this?
He's really fascinating. He's like this link between the living and the dead,
Right.
between earth and the divine.
Yeah, he's the one who lays it out for the rich man, right?
Mm.
He explains why he can't get what he wants.
Right. He explains the consequences.
But he's also merciful. He's kind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He represents justice and compassion.
Right. Yeah.
Showing us that God holds us accountable for what we do,
Right.
but also that God offers us forgiveness.
Right. It seems like everything in this parable is symbolic.
It really does.
There's just layer after layer to it.
And that's what makes these deep dives so fun. We keep peeling back these layers, and there's always something new.
Right.
Something that connects to our own lives.
Yeah. Let's go back to the rich man asking for Lazarus to warn his brothers.
Mm-mm.
Why is that even in there?
Mm-hmm.
He suddenly cares about their souls.
Yeah. It's odd.
Even though he couldn't care less about the man literally at his gate.
It does feel like, too little, too late. He waits until it's too late to change anything, and then suddenly he sees the problem.
Yeah, and Abraham's like, even if someone rose from the dead, it wouldn't guarantee their repentance.
Right.
So it makes you wonder, can we even learn from other people's mistakes?
Yeah.
Or do we have to go through it ourselves?
The parable makes me think that true transformation, it's more than just seeing a miracle.
Yeah. It's more than just hearing a scary story, too.
Right. You have to be willing to confront your own selfishness, your own perceptions, and actively choose to do what's right, what's good.
And that takes a change of heart.
Yeah.
It takes, letting go of the things we cling to,
It does.
our comforts,
Yeah.
and embracing something bigger.
It's about realizing that real fulfillment, it doesn't come from stuff.
Right.
Or from status. It comes from living by your values.
Yeah, it comes from living by what you believe.
Yeah.
And this parable, it isn't meant to scare us.
Right.
It's supposed to inspire us
To live better lives.
to make choices that reflect what we think is good, to show God's love.
Yeah.
It does remind us, though, that we have to answer for our choices,
We do.
the big ones and the small ones, and they affect not just us, but others.
But it's also a story about hope.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when we mess up,
Right.
even when things are rough, we can be forgiven.
Right.
There's always redemption.
This story has been around for so long.
I know.
I think it's because it touches on these universal things.
Yeah.
The desire to live a life that matters.
Yeah.
The need for justice.
Yeah.
The fear of dying. but also the hope that there's more.
It really does. It makes us ask those big questions,
Sure.
what happens after death?
Yeah. What is good? What is evil? What does it mean to live a good life? It really does make you think, This parable, it feels so relevant, even though it's ancient.
It does, yeah. The themes are timeless, really.
Yeah.
Wealth and disparity, social responsibility, people wanting to just protect themselves.
Right.
It's not just in the Bible, it's everywhere today.
Yeah, like it's always in the news,
It is.
the gap between the rich and the poor. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by it all,
Yeah.
Or just tune it out because it's just like too much.
And that's why this parable is so important.
Yeah.
It reminds us, wake up. You can't ignore the suffering around you, no matter how far away it seems
Yeah.
or how big the problem is.
Right, right. It forces us to look in the mirror and ask ourselves the hard questions.
What does it even mean to, actually live with compassion?
Yeah, because it's easy to just say, oh, I care.
Oh, yeah.
But this parable is saying, okay, but what are you doing about it?
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, you can't just acknowledge the problem and move on.
Right.
You have to actually do something.
Find a way to make a real difference.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
Right.
Sometimes it's the little stuff that matters most.
Absolutely. Just helping out your neighbor, giving to a charity you believe in, or just being kind,
Right.
treating people with respect. It all adds up.
Yeah. One of the hardest parts for me about this parable
Yeah.
is that, our choices have consequences that go on and on. They don't just end here, forever. It really makes you think about every choice.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what impact you're having, not just on yourself,
Yeah.
but on others too.
It's sobering, but it's also, really empowering,
Yeah.
If our choices matter that much,
Mm-hmm.
if they really do echo into eternity,
Yeah.
then we have a huge responsibility,
Yeah.
but also a huge opportunity.
Yeah. To make our own destiny,
Yeah,
to help shape the world.
exactly. And it goes back to that core question in the parable.
What will people remember us for?
Yeah, will it be our achievements?
Right.
Or what we owned?
Right.
Or will it be how we loved people, the kindness we showed?
The impact we had on their lives.
Yes. This deep dive has really given me a lot to think about.
Me too. Me too.
And as always, with these great stories, it doesn't give us easy answers. No.
But it gives us a way to think about it.
It's a framework for reflecting on your own life,
Mm.
to help you be more aware, more compassionate,
Right.
live with more purpose.
Yeah, it reminds us that, chasing after wealth and status, it all means nothing if we lose our humanity along the way.
That's right. Real fulfillment comes from serving others.
From loving each other.
Yeah.
Thank you for walking us through this.
My pleasure. I love diving into these stories.
Yeah. And to everyone listening, we hope this made you think about what it means to live a good life.
To live with meaning, to live with purpose.
Make choices that matter.
Oh,
Make choices you believe in, and leave the world better than you found it.
couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.